All right, with interest rates on the rise, what's that? Is now the right time to buy a home in Des Moines or should you wait a little? That's a great question. That's perfect timing. All right, don't worry, not going to be a boring screen share the entire video, but wanted to show you guys a couple of interesting figures here at the start that give a good indication of where things are at for buyers in central Iowa and the Des Moines housing market today. So first of all, what I have pulled up on my screen here is the multiple listing service, the MLS. This just gives you, this tracks all the activity that goes on in the Des Moines real estate housing market. That was redundant. Des Moines housing market, Des Moines real estate market. But anyways, over the last 4 weeks, since about mid-January, we have consistently seen the number of homes getting sold. So the number of homes that go from being on the market to having an accepted offer, that has been outpacing the number of new homes listed for sale. That is indicating to me that spring is going to be a tough time for buyers. Surprise, surprise, the last 3 years have been a tough time for buyers. We'll talk about that in more detail over the rest of this video. So months of inventory is a metric that tracks, for the purpose of today's video, how hard of a housing market is for buyers. It tracks whether the housing market is going to favor sellers or buyers. The higher the number is, the better the chances are that a buyer is not going to have people to compete against. They're going to have plenty of options available and be able to take their pick of home and take their time doing it. It's going to be an easier, more fun purchasing process. The lower the number is, and anything below 3 is considered a very strong seller's market. If you remember back in 21 and 22 when interest rates were like at 3% and we saw houses get listed and have 10 offers in a day, that is what happens when the months of inventory is at like 1.5, like we saw in 2021. It even got below 1. It was just insane. It got to 0.9. And what is going on right now is we were low in the spring of 2023. We got back up in the fall. This is the typical seasonality that we see in our Iowa market. And then since December, we have seen this steep drop from 3.9 down to 2.7. So we're in February, not even in the spring yet, and it is already getting to be a strong seller's market. So it's not necessarily the most fun time to buy a home for a buyer, but there are positives, and I want to make sure that you understand this, okay? This video is not doom and gloom, don't buy a house. It's also not a video that says you should always buy a house, because it's impossible for it to be both a good time to sell and a good time to buy at the same time. You can't have both. But there are some facts that you should know. One really interesting part of our market right now is new construction. So I just looked at months of inventory for our whole housing market. I'm going to switch this over now to just looking at resale homes and get rid of new construction on this graph. So here, when we just look at resale homes, we have months of inventory even lower. This is at 1.7, from 2.9 down to 1.7. If we look at new construction, which makes up over half of our market, months of inventory right now is at 6, which is a perfectly balanced sellers and buyers market. Okay, so what that tells me, since new construction makes up about half of our market, there is much less demand out there for new construction right now. I have a few reasons I think why that is. Just anecdotally, their houses are not as desirable. They're not in established neighborhoods typically. Lower priced new construction homes are all very, very similar in look and feel, and people really like unique homes, I think, and established neighborhoods. But there is opportunity to be had right now in the new construction market where there is not necessarily opportunity to be had with resale homes in central Iowa. When months of inventory is at 6, what you see happening is homes stay on the market for much longer. It's normal, or more normal in our market, for a new construction home to sit on the market for the better half of a year. To brag on some clients of mine a little bit, I had people purchase, just a wonderful family purchase this home on Knoll Drive in Norwalk last year. It had been on the market for 370 days. This home started off at $515,000, and then the builder slowly had to drop the price until they got to $399,000. We got it for $395,000 with a few thousand in closing costs, and then it appraised for significantly higher than that. I'm not going to share that number, but the point being, there were not a lot of resale homes with this opportunity to be the only buyer and to have all of the negotiating power. When there are other buyers competing for a resale home, on example, you don't get to hold the balls in your court. You don't get to say, oh, we want a lower price, and we're also having these inspection terms. and the closing date we want. You have to give a lot when there's other buyers competing against you. You don't have the negotiating power, and you often don't get to have as big of an instant equity gain or a win like you do in situations like this. Okay, so that's what's been going on in our market lately, both with resale and new construction homes. Pretty interesting. I find it fascinating. Maybe you think this is just an incredibly boring video, but this is the good part where I want to share with you where the secret benefit, I think, lies of buying in Des Moines, even when it's not necessarily the right time to buy. Okay, so Des Moines is just an awesome place. It's America's hidden gem. I've gotten some pretty scathing comments about Des Moines before, but regardless, I still stand that it is just wonderful, one of the best places in the country. We're consistently outpacing similar cities in both population growth, GDP growth, and employment growth. Our cost of living is about 10% cheaper than the country's average, and then our cost of doing business is about 17% cheaper than the country's average. Combine that with the welcoming atmosphere and the kind people and the community events that we have here in Des Moines, the wonderful suburbs, the wonderful city planners that make this a great place to live, and you have a recipe for home value growth. Now, if you remember back in 2021, people were saying, oh, now's a terrible time to buy a house. Don't buy a house. Even in Des Moines, I heard people say that. Oh, we're just going to wait for the market to cool off a little bit. All right, so this article that I'm going to show you right now is from October of 2021, just talking about, like so many articles did then, no one seems worried about a housing bubble, just like last time the bubble burst, indicating that, yeah, it's probably a housing bubble, prices are going to come down. I'll share my screen quick. Last time, I'll share it today. But if we look at home values, average price per square foot, since the 12 months from February of 2021 through January of 2022, when this article was written about the housing bubble, and we compare that to today, home values have gone up statistically 15% in the Des Moines Metro in central Iowa. So if you were one of those people who were hearing those articles, were trying to decide, I want to buy now, but I'm nervous about buying a home when the market's too hot, and then in a couple of years when I want to sell it, I'm going to have to sell it at a loss. That did not happen when the market was much, much harder for buyers than it is today. Okay, it's not a great time to be a buyer right now. It's not super fun because you don't have a ton of options, and there is competition out there from other buyers looking for homes, but it's not nearly as bad as it was in 2021 and 2022. You're not competing against 10 other offers for a single home. But even when the market was this tough for a buyer, people who bought then have still seen a 15% equity increase in their home since that time they bought, where some people would have said, oh, you shouldn't buy right now. On a $300,000 house, that's $45,000 in equity gained because they purchased a home rather than renting. And I'm not saying everyone should always buy a house. Absolutely not. Talk to a real estate agent, really put thought into that decision, because there is a cost and there is a risk with home ownership. But what I am saying is that with where Des Moines is headed, even if you're buying a house in a market where it's kind of tough to be a buyer, where you don't have a ton of options, and where you're competing against other buyers and maybe have to offer more than you would in a more balanced, normal market, I think you're still going to win in Des Moines with where our community is headed. I have a lot of people that ask me about like up and coming areas to buy a house in, because when you buy a house in an up and coming area, you know that there's developments going on there that are going to draw more people there over time and make the home values go up even higher. Des Moines is the country's up and coming area. It's one of them. Even though it's tough and not super easy to be a buyer right now, you are still going to see your home value appreciate over time. I've been telling my buyers 3 years. That's very conservative. There's a cost to home ownership, and it takes time for that cost to pay off. So you need to buy a home and plan to live there for 3 years, but I think it's going to be a very safe investment. Is now the right time to buy a home in Des Moines? My answer would be yes, but only if you do it in the right way. There are probably better times than the spring season, because that is the best time to be a seller in Des Moines, and you can't have both. But you are absolutely not making a mistake buying a home in central Iowa in the spring of 2024. I've been getting lots of calls lately from people moving to and buying homes in Des Moines, around Des Moines, and I absolutely love it. And so if that is you, if there's anything I can help you with, or if there's anything you'd like to know more about, my number is going to be on the screen and in the description below. And I've got tons of other videos like this on my channel and coming out new every week. So I will see you guys on the next one.